Welcome to the channel. Brock Ashby here. I am an online personal trainer, body transformation coach based here in Sydney. I was a face-to-face personal trainer for 4 years before I went online, which I've been for now 5 years, training thousands of people globally, trained a few celebrities here and there. Today, I am here to talk to you about how to successfully know that you are losing fat, not just losing weight. There is a difference. And most of us, what we really want is to lose fat, not just lose weight. So I want to break that down to you today, but there are a few things that we want to see first. So the first thing, you need to know if you are losing fat. And I mean know. And the only way to really know something is to see something backed by data. So there's a quote out there, what is measured can be improved. If we're not measuring anything, it's really hard to know if we're making any progress. For example, if you're saving up for a house and you're like, oh yeah, I just need an extra 20 grand and then I'll have enough for the deposit. If you're not tracking how much you're spending, how much you're saving, you're not even looking at your bank account, it's going to be very hard to know if you've made an extra 20 grand over 3 months or something like that. Unless you just get 20 grand, you win the lottery, good on you. If you don't, it's just really hard to know. You can't just kind of like freestyle things. And that's what a lot of people are doing with their fitness. They're not tracking their photos. They're not tracking their weight. They're not measuring themselves. And they're like, am I getting better? Am I losing body fat? Do I look better in the mirror? I'm not too sure. So we need to measure things. And the way that I like to measure things is with a 3-pronged approach. The first one is by taking photos of your physique. I like front, back, and side because you can see how your body's developing all over. And that's including your legs too. So taking full body shots from front, side, and back does really make a difference. You also want to keep them at the same time of the day and with the same lighting and the same place because there's less variables. Because if you weigh yourself at 6 in the morning when you first wake up, before you have any liquids or food and after you go to the bathroom, that's going to be a very consistent place to take them because when you wake up, go to the bathroom and just take your photos, it's a pretty consistent thing. But if you take it at 6 in the morning and then take it at 9 p.m., it's going to be very different. You have a whole day of food in your stomach, so you might be a little bit more bloated. You might weigh 2 to 3 kilos heavier than you would at 6 a.m. And if you have dinner or if you don't have dinner, if you've had a lot of water or not had a lot of water, it's going to be a very different representation of yourself. So these kind of take variables out, but when you take photos, just make sure it's the same. And that goes with your weight and your measurements too. So while you're taking your photos, you may as well just weigh yourself and do your measurements too, and then everything's going to be slick and the same. The second thing you want to think about is your body fat needs to be going down on average. It doesn't matter if it goes down 1 week and then goes up the next week, and then goes up the next week after that, and then it goes back down. What matters is your trajectory, not what happens day to day. Because like I just said, even within 1 day, you can gain or lose 2 to 3 kilos. But within a week, if you weigh yourself every day, you can actually see the trend. As long as from Monday to Sunday, it went down, then you're going to see success. Or maybe Monday to Sunday, it kind of went up, but it went down. Then you had a spike on Sunday, and then on Monday, it kind of continued to drop down. As long as we see that angle heading down, then we are going to be successfully dropping fat, right? So I have a client at the moment that I'm training here in the Team Brock Ashby body quarters where we're recording this. And he's been with me for 5 weeks. We've dropped about 4 kilos over the 5 weeks, but we've noticed a trend that on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, he drops pretty significant amounts of body weight, like a kilo. But then over the next kind of 3 or 4 days, he goes up a little bit and then comes back down to the same point. But week to week, we've seen this kind of similar pattern every time, and we were talking about it yesterday trying to figure out what's happening, and we can't really put our finger on it, whether it's the amount of fluid he's having, whether he's not sticking to his diet or anything, but we've been following it, and we just can't really put it down to anything at the moment. But what we do know is that over the 5 weeks, he's lost 4 kilos, and that's really all that matters. So make sure you're tracking everything frequently so you can see the average. The more data points you have, the more you can see the trend. So I don't really like to just upload photos, weight, Sorry, I don't really just like to do weight weekly because you could have a spike and then it might kick you in the nuts and feel like you just lose motivation if you see your weight not going down. But if you do it every day or every second day, as frequently as you can handle, then you can start to see the trend. And if you're not losing weight, maybe you need to change your strategy and it's not working, but you won't know unless you're measuring it. Third point, you need to be losing fat at the correct rate. And there is a bit of a guideline in terms of how much body fat we want to be losing per week. And that is 1% of your body weight per week. So this is specific to how much you weigh. So for example, myself, I weigh at around about 90 kilos. And for me, if I want to lose fat at a good rate, and I'll define what that good rate is and why, I would want to lose around 900 grams per week, which is almost 1 kilo, which is almost 2.25 pounds. So maybe 2 pounds a week is what I would want to drop if I was pursuing fat loss at a correct rate. And it's kind of an amalgamation of what the research says. So if we lose around 1% of our body weight per week, it's not an arbitrary number that just applies to a certain number of people. Because if it was, oh, you want to lose half a kilo a week, for a big person, that's not going to be much weight. For a really small person, that might be too much weight in 1 week. So it really depends. But 1% of your individual body weight is a really good number. So it's not too fast that you're in a very aggressive calorie deficit and it's hard to handle, which I get, I've been there. But it's also not too slow that you feel like nothing's working and you feel like you want to give up on your diet, because these are the two problems that we have with dieting. Because a lot of people unfortunately fail at diets. There's a saying, diet starts Monday or diet starts tomorrow. People are always starting new diets, and the reason is they can't stick to it. And that's usually for two reasons. One, you're going too aggressive, you're going too hard too early, and it's unsustainable. You might be going keto, you might be going carnivore, and you might be going too aggressive. But if you're going too aggressive, you may not even be able to stick to it. So we want to pull that back to 1% of your body weight per week. Because if you lose 2 kilos the first week and then 3 the next week, you may not be able to stick to those low calories for long. If it's too slow, you may just want to give up. And you may think, well, this isn't working. I'm just going to give up because fitness isn't for me. Blah, 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 blah. Woe is me. I'm going to go watch The Gentleman on Netflix. Good show, by the way. Number 4. Your numbers aren't going down in the gym. So a good way to know if we're losing fat and not muscle is if our weights aren't going down in the gym. If we're considerably getting weaker in the gym, that's not a great place to be. That's a sign that we're potentially losing muscle as well as fat. And that's losing weight. But when we lose fat on its own and retain our muscle mass through hard training, through applying progressive overload when even in a deficit, that's a good sign that we're losing fat and just holding on to our muscle. So if your numbers are going down, let's say you squat 100 kilos for 8 reps, and then the next week, you get 105 for 8, which is good if you're in a deficit, but then you get like 100, and then on week 4 of that program, you get 90. That's a sign of many things, but ultimately you're not recovering, you're potentially in too much of an aggressive calorie deficit, and because you're getting weaker, you're probably losing muscle mass. So those are not good signs. We want our numbers to be going up. Even in a calorie deficit, we can get stronger. We can't really build muscle in a calorie deficit. That's quite complex and challenging. A select group of people can, but if your numbers are going down, it's not a good sign, and you need to kind of re-look at quite a few things. It could be your training program, it could be the amount of calories that you're on, but those are the things that you need to consider. If you're successfully losing fat, you want your numbers to continue to go up. Now, here's some considerations that you need to think of as well. Even if you are successful in a calorie deficit, you will still be hungry. You are in a deficit of energy. It's inevitable. You are literally receiving less calories than you need. And that is how we lose fat. In that discrepancy of calories, that's called calorie deficit. That's how we lose fat. But we're still going to get hungry, whether we do it successfully or not. Hunger is a part of the deal. If you're dieting, that's what's going to happen. There are ways to prevent hunger, and that is by increasing fiber intake, maybe structuring your meals in a certain way that suit you best. Maybe in the morning you're not as hungry, so you don't have to eat as much. Maybe you do a little bit of an intermittent fasting deal where you just have a black coffee like this in the morning, and you kind of push your eating window till 10 a.m. till 6, and that's where you eat. That works best for you, and then you don't eat around that. That could work for you, right? But you will still be hungry. That's a part of the deal, and there's no real way around it. There are ways to be like extremely hungry and diet poorly by potentially just like having a lot of liquid calories, having a lot of foods that don't have fiber. You will feel hungry, and you'll probably train worse, feel worse, lower energy, all that kind of stuff that isn't good. But you will be hungry. The second thing is tracking calories is pretty much essential for everyone. You can lose fat without it, but as I said, what is measured can be progressed, can be improved. If you're not tracking your calories, it's really hard to be aware of what you're consuming. So I would look at using MyFitnessPal. You don't have to use the premium if you don't want to fork out for that. You can still use the free version, but just getting an awareness of the amount of calories that you're consuming is going to be a pretty big part of the deal of losing fat. If you're following a meal plan, that may work for you too, and you just follow the meals and you still lose fat and someone's changing it for you. I don't really believe in meal plans. I don't think it's a really great long-term strategy. I like to empower people through education so they have the knowledge, and then get them to track their calories, because then that opens up their freedom to eat the foods that they like and still lose fat and still get the results that they want. If you wake up and you feel like having lasagna for breakfast, you could still do that and lose fat. I've said this a few times on my YouTube channel, but I've done an ice cream challenge where in 2019 I ate ice cream for 30 days, actually gelato ice cream, much better than normal ice cream in my opinion. And that was around 900 calories of gelato every day for 30 days, and I still managed to lose 5.2 kilos in 30 days. And that isn't to glorify ice cream, although I think it does deserve all the glory. It's very nice. I had some Magnum the other night. It just kind of paints a picture of sustainability and having kind of freedom to eat what you want. And if you're at a kid's birthday party and there's an ice cream cake, you can have a slice and you can still lose fat. Maybe it's not the best decision in the world, but it may help you to feel like a human being and feel like you're not on a bodybuilder, Tupperware, cut and paste diet, and you can still enjoy yourself amongst friends and family. So that's kind of my belief on that, and that's why I'm not too big on meal plans, and I'm big on tracking calories, because you have this awareness. And even if I was at that kid's birthday and I wanted to have a piece of fairy bread, which I also think is delicious, you can track that as well. So tracking calories is almost essential for everyone. The third point is don't expect to build muscle in a calorie deficit, but maintain it. I've already talked about this, but building muscle is reserved for people that are enhanced, so using PEDs, then it can be possible. Also, if you're a beginner, if you're in a calorie deficit, because your body is just not used to lifting weights at all, the stimulus is so strong that you can even still build muscle in that deficit. And the same is true for people that are coming back to weights after like 6 months or more off, because you're kind of like a newbie again. You've lost all that stimulus, your body's desensitized to it. So when you train, you could be in a deficit and still build muscle. But for most of us mortals that have been training their ass off consistently, it's not really going to happen. So what we can do is still train close to failure within 3 reps in reserve and 0 reps in reserve, and we're going to maintain that muscle whilst we're cutting. And that's the deal. That's really all that happens. We maintain our muscle, but we drop that fat. And then when we finish getting to the body fat percentage that we want to achieve, then that's when we start slabbing on the muscle in a surplus. But we want to do it in a cyclical nature of bulking and cutting, bulking and cutting, bulking and cutting. It's just the most efficient way to do it, and the most successful way to transform your body. The fourth point is just an option, but you could do something like a DEXA scan before and after if you're really committed and you really want to see the difference accurately. So a DEXA scan, if you're unaware, is a kind of like a body fat test that's really in depth. So you lie down. It's kind of like you're getting like an MRI or something like that. Like you lie down literally, and something like goes over you, and it's like, and you come out, and then they show you like your body, where you store the fat, how much fat you have, how much muscle you have, if it's good for your age, and all this kind of stuff. And although it's not the most accurate thing, it's not like 100% like this is exactly what your body fat is, because it can be it can fluctuate and your results can be different if you've had a lot of water, if you haven't had a lot of water, if you've trained that day, if you haven't trained that day, if you've eaten a lot of food that day, if you haven't eaten a lot of food. But in general, if you do it at the same time, under the same circumstances, one before your cut and one after your cut, you can get a pretty good understanding if you've successfully lost fat and held all your muscle and just dropped body fat, or if you've lost weight, where that's a combination of muscle and fat. If you haven't lost weight at all, maybe, or if your body composition has changed, maybe you're a beginner and you have gained muscle while you've cut. That's really cool. So that's just another type of thing that you can consider to kind of make it a bit more obvious if you have successfully lost fat or not. But to come back to the first point, if you're taking regular photos, taking your weight regularly as well, and even taking measurements like, measuring your arms, measuring your waist is a good one, your hips, your chest, that can be a good sign if you are losing fat or not. All right, that is the video. Hopefully that helped you to know if you're successfully losing fat or you're just kind of losing muscle and fat, which isn't the best, but it's still good. But this can really help you take your results to the next level. And if you do want help with coaching in taking your results to the next level, maybe you haven't achieved the body that you've wanted, maybe you haven't, maybe you've tried a lot of online trainings and they just haven't been a good fit for you. I'm an online coach as well. The website of mine, teambrockashby.com, is in the link in description. So if you want to check that out, that is how I can help you and how I've helped thousands of people internationally as well. If you want to watch more videos, there should be one here that YouTube thinks you'll really enjoy. Cheers, man.